some facts about it before we go into it, just to kind of give people an introduction into this book. All right, so Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're live. I'm Brother Doug, as always, with Brother Yahusha, Brother Dennis, my mom's sister Sharon's with me. And we're going to be doing a study called Testing the Book of the Ascension of Isaiah. Really, I never thought I was going to have to do this type of study because, for the most part, this is a Christian book. Okay, this is not an Israelite book. This is a Christian book. So, I just was never under the impression we would have to do a expose on this book, mainly because of that, versus books like, Jubilees, which are inherently a Hebrew type of apocalypse, or a pseudepigraphal. Shouldn't even say apocalypse. I misspoke there. A Hebrew type of apocrypha, which I could understand why people of this walk flock to Jubilees and Jasher, because it's a very pro-Torah and all that jazz. But this book, essentially, you have to put the air on because there's like no air moving right now.
Yeah.
So, guys, just kind of bear with me here. So I want to give you guys a decent introduction explanation of this pseudepigraphal book. So basically, if you look online here, Ascension of Isaiah, it was essentially a Christian slash Jewish pseudepigrapha, meaning falsely facts about it before we go into it, just to kind of give people an introduction into this book. My bad, guys. Sorry about that. Had something in the background there. Okay, so again, the Ascension of Isaiah was a Jewish slash Christian, a mixed theological pseudepigrapha. So it's supposed to be loosely based upon a story, a narrative that the prophet Isaiah supposedly witnessed all this, and never claims that Isaiah is writing this stuff down, by the way. It never says that within the book itself. So I'm being very careful to be honest, with what the book says, and not with putting false accusations against it. So it never claims that Isaiah is the author, by the way. It never says that. So basically, the narrative is that Isaiah witnessed all these visions. He was taken up to heaven like Enoch. He supposedly witnessed all these visions about the future, about Yahusha's first coming, right? This is what the book's about. Okay. Also, it seems to be a Mishnah or a Midrash on King Manasseh and his life. So one of the biggest reasons, before even getting to the contents of the book, just looking at it from face value, it seems to be more of a Mishnah or Midrash on how evil Manasseh got before he repented. That's the purpose of the book, really. Then it switches gears at chapter 4, chapter 5, to end times prophecy, Yahusha's first coming, second coming, all that. From chapters 4, 5, and on, it focuses mainly on that. And there's some issues with certain contents referring to those events, because there's some things that are added in and all that. So the biggest problem is that this Ascension of Isaiah was not dated back until about 70 to 175 AD, meaning that Isaiah could not have written it.
No.
None of his contemporaries, who the book claims he told his contemporaries, he told the other prophets that all this happened to him. There's no way they could have wrote it. So we're left to a mixture of authors, possibly, multiple authors, possibly. The Christian part of it could be a Christian author. The Jewish mystic part of it could be, a Jewish mystic rabbi writing part of it. So this is the problem too, is that the book of itself, the manuscript itself, has mixed theology. That's number two biggest issue you're going to get into with this book. But according to scholars, the earliest would have been 70 AD. That's after the destruction of the temple, to 175 AD. So basically, this has to be a work of fiction, because if the earliest was 70 AD, the original scriptures, if they were in the temple and everything, though that original copy of the scriptures would have been burned. Okay. And any books along with it would have been burned, meaning that whoever wrote this between 70 AD and 175 AD, it's an original work. It's not based on any other scripture. So it's someone's opinion being put forth as this is what Isaiah saw, supposedly. Okay, this is the biggest problem I have about it, is that it's too far from the original datings of the scriptures. And that's the biggest problem I have. I mean, do I think some of it could have come from original source that was passed down orally, that there was more to certain prophecies in Isaiah that it could have been orally passed down? Yeah, possibly. There's, according to the book, it claims that chapters 3 to 4, I think chapter 4 mainly, was part of Isaiah 13 initially. That's possible. I don't know if that's true, but I could see it as probable or possible. Does that make the whole book scripture? No. Just because one portion of it could have possibly been from a prior source does not make the whole book scripture. Okay. So I just want to get that out of the way. Okay. What else? Like I said, I pretty much gave you guys the notes on what this book is really about. So again, you can go on this Wikipedia link I'm going to give you guys. This will the main opinion is that this book had not one author. It was combined. It was fragments of different manuscripts combined into one manuscript. That's what Wikipedia itself is even saying. Okay, so it says, is not known when exactly the three different sections of the Ascension were combined. The Greek fragment from 5th to 6th century, the palimpsest giving the text of the fragments of the first Latin translation, yada, yada, yada. So it's basically saying, according to scholars, this book is actually 3 separate sources. So basically you had 3 separate fragments that would have been combined into one manuscript. The problem with that is, as you're going to see when you test this book for yourself, it has too much mixed theology because of that. Because they're taking it from 3 different sources, making it one book. Essentially is what happened. So one of the reasons I can't accept it as scripture is that, and I know people are going to say, Doug, you're a hypocrite. The Bible has many different authors. The difference with the Bible is, even though there's how many authors, 70 different authors or whatever it is, all of them agree. They don't disagree. That's how you know it's inspired. Because some of the authors of the Bibles never knew one another, yet they have the same message.
Right.
Huge difference, guys. So you can't use the strongman argument, well, the Bible had different authors. Not the same thing. Okay, so anyway, Ascension of Isaiah, chapter 4, verse 1, we're going to go to. And I'm going to try to put on the screen, guys, found this from early Christian writings. It's almost like a PDF of the book here. You guys can see it up here. So this is a PDF of it. So you guys will be able to read along with me on the screen. If you want, I can drop this link in the description. You guys want to test this book for yourself. Just be forewarned, there's going to be a lot of mixed theology once you get to about, I would say, once you get to chapter 6 and 7 and on, it starts getting weird. So let's start here. So we're starting at chapter 4, verse 7, one of the issues of the book here. Okay, so again, chapters 1 to 4, for the most part, you won't see much issues. But as you get later on in the book, you're going to see a lot of different things that show it has multiple authors. And all the people in the world will believe in him, and they will sacrifice to him daily and will serve him, saying, "This is Elohim, besides there is no other." Okay, so why did I reference this one? Okay. Oh, 421, my bad, guys. No, there's nothing wrong with that one. So here we go. Chapter 4, verse 21. And the descent of the beloved into Sheol, behold, is written in the section where Yahuwah says, "Behold, my son will understand, and all these things, behold, they are written in the Psalms and the parables of David, the son of Jesse, and the Proverbs of Solomon his son, and the words of Korah, and Ethan the Israelite, and the words of Asaph, and the rest of the Psalms also, which the messenger of the Spirit inspired." There's the problem. Open book test, guys. Is Yahuwah's Ruach an angel? No, right? So where are we getting this language, the angel of the Spirit, from? It's not in Scripture. This book, as you continue to read in this book, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong document here. As you continue to read in this book, it portrays the Ruach HaKadosh, the set-apart Spirit, as a literal messenger. This is a big problem. And so this is why I had this referenced here. So the Ruach is separated from Yahusha as another entity in like a weird trinity, and it is being called a malach or an angel. So this is the biggest issue I have with this book. If you consider it scripture, then you have to accept that Yahuwah's Spirit is not him. It's a separate being that is an angel. So essentially, you would have to accept the heresy that when Yahusha was being baptized, that an angel dwelt in him. If you accept this book as scripture, which some people have. I have seen certain camps out there, they haven't named this book, but they have preached that the Ruach somehow is a Malachim or a Malach, and the Malach indwelled Yahusha, and Yahusha was just a regular human being born of Miriam and was indwelled by an angel, basically. So this type of heresy comes about from a book like this. So anyway, chapter 7, verse 23 says the same exact thing. So we'll just go there and show you that I'm not lying. Chapter 7, verse 23. And I rejoice with great joy. Those who love the Most High and his beloved will afterwards ascend there by the angel of the set-apart Spirit. So now it's separating the Father and the Son from the Spirit. You essentially have a Trinity. So whoever wrote portions of this book was a Trinitarian Christian, possibly Catholic, possibly. So right there we have, again, the mention of a weird Trinity, that one of the members of the Trinity somehow is an angel. All right, so Ascension of Isaiah 8, verse 18, promoting a Trinity. 7 heavens. This is another reference that, to me, proves that this book is not scripture. 7 heavens, you can only find this idea in Kabbalism and in paganism. You will not find this concept. And I know people have told me, oh, the book of Enoch has 10 heavens. If it does, please provide in the comment section actual first Enoch references, by the way. I will not accept second Enoch, third Enoch as legitimate. Because I keep hearing this online. Oh, first Enoch talks about 10 heavens or 7 heavens. Please give me proof of that. Please. Please put in the comment section if that's the case. I'm trying to say that as nice as I possibly can. Please provide me proof of that. As far as to my knowledge, there is no inspired apocryphal literature that talks about 7 or 10 heavens. There's nowhere that you can find that other than paganism and the Kabbalah, which, if you understand that Israel went to Babylon, right, for 70 years, They're obviously okay. All right. Seven heavens, right? Wikipedia, okay? So this is not my opinion, okay? In mythological or religious cosmology, seven heavens refer to seven levels or divisions of heavens. The concept is found in ancient Mesopotamian religions, okay? Essentially the Sumerian religion, the Babylonian religion. Can also be found in Judaism. I wouldn't call that a legitimate source because Judaism is also Kabbalism, okay? And Islam. The scriptures do not mention seven levels of heaven. Some of these traditions, including Jainism, also have a concept of seven earths or seven underworlds, again, not mentioned in scripture, both with metaphysical realms of deities. So again, this goes back to astrology and the Kabbalah. This goes back to basically, guys, for every in Kabbalism and other pagan religions, they would categorize that each heaven represents a planet or a star. So to get people into angel worship, okay, they would have people worship the seven heavens as seven stars or angels. Okay. This is where the seven heaven belief come from, because I know there's going to be people in the comment section saying, oh, Doug, well, fourth Baruch has seven heavens. Well, my point exactly. Fourth Baruch is a Kabbalistic book. My point exactly. So understand, guys, that this is a heretical belief system. Seven heavens is not scriptural. It's just not. The only time you see it in extra biblical literature, it's always with a Kabbalistic influence in these books. Whether you talk about the Apocalypse of Abraham, whether you talk about this book, whether you talk about Fourth Baruch, all of them had a Jewish Kabbalistic flavoring in those books. Maybe not the whole book of those books, but they would have basically very rabbinical influences in those books. So again, the article here talks about the notion of belief in a cosmos structured or tired into seven heavens, tiered, likely originates or derives from the seven visible heavenly bodies, yada, yada, yada. Again, the worship of the planets. Again, okay. And then it even goes into Greek astronomy and cosmology. Notice it says Greek astronomy, okay? So this is heathen astronomy, okay? So again, Mesopotamian cosmology, that would be, Babylon, okay? So obviously they inherited it from Babylon when they went to Babylon for 70 years, obviously. So just trying to explain to you guys why I utterly reject the seven heaven beliefs, and I think it's unbiblical. And by default, if this book is teaching seven heavens, it can't be scripture. Okay. Yahusha's name was revealed to Isaiah. This is one of the additions I was referring to. Nowhere in Isaiah's prophecies is he ever given the name of the Messiah. Matter of fact, in the Bible alone, there's only like one prophet that's given Yahusha's name, and it's Zechariah, and it's not even directly. It says his name is the branch.
Mm-hmm.
So Yahuwah is not saying my son's name is going to be Yahushua or Yahusha. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see Yahuwah ever doing that with the prophets. So to me, that's very fishy. I don't know if anyone else wants to mention anything. I know, Brother Yahusha, you're more versed in this topic than I am about why Yahusha's name would usually not be verbatimly given before he came.
I don't know. Other than I just never seen that in scripture. It always seems to be like contained, hidden. Rather than just verbatim. This is his name.
Yeah. And what other literature do we see that not in scripture? We see it.
Ezra.
Fourth
Ezra.
Fourth Ezra, right? So this would, for viewers and listeners out there, the reason we're making these points here is that Fourth Ezra we've already found out to be heretical. So if we have other books, right, that are promoting the same ideas, I think we could come to possible conclusion, maybe not for a fact, possible conclusion, there's similar authors. Okay, so that to me would be alarm bell. That if you got a similar author to another heretical book, or at least a group, a community that believes in the same heretical things. Go ahead, brother.
I'll come back.
Okay. So hopefully viewers and listeners, you understand what I'm trying to make points on here is that these are alarm bells that should be going off. Why is there similar doctrines from 4th Ezra in the Ascension of Isaiah? That's very weird. That should, it's not as obvious in this book, obviously, because there's parallels to scripture along with it. It's a little bit more half and half with this book than 4th Ezra was, but it still has certain doctrines from it. Go ahead.
So I just wonder what the intention of these Christians, right, putting this stuff like this in here, like in 4th Ezra and in here, right, that Yahushua would be his name. Like, I wonder if, like, they were trying to increase people's belief in him, or, like, just, like,
Yeah.
why?
I think this might have been a way, to your point, this might have been a way to try to convert the rabbis of the day. Maybe inserting this into there, and possibly the Yahudim part of this, or the Kabbalistic part of this book was written, that section was written before the Christian part. So a Christian came along, found this book, and figured, okay, let's put some messianic stuff in here so that if a Yahudim comes across this, they'll believe in Yahusha. They could have been well-meaning. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. They could have been well-meaning, trying to witness to these type of groups that would write stuff like this. They probably came across it, was like, okay, let's put his name in there, because then that's going to show more proof that he is the true Messiah, rather than just using what's available to us, using what we know is real prophecy. They probably started trying to add their own prophecies, because we see this right in the apocalypse of Abraham as well. They felt the need to add in that Satan kissing him on the cheek was a prophecy. Do we know that's a prophecy? Not really, but could it be? Yes, or could not be. It's more or less. I think they were trying to. These early first century Christians were trying to make it give more proof and evidence for the Yahudim of that time to accept the Brit Hadashah. I think that's what it was. I think that's the only agenda I could see, is that they felt like they needed to add things in there to make it more obvious, rather than just relying on the scriptures. They're now adding stuff into books that, we don't even know which one came before the other, like which parts of this book came before the other. The Christian parts could have came later on to try to witness to whoever wrote the, like, Yahudim type of portion. So that would be my assumption. Whether it's correct or not, I think that would be the assumption of me, why they would add things in there like that. So anyway, either way, even if those prophecies are true, just to play devil's advocate here, you still have other areas of the book that are not true. So even if someone wants to make the argument, well, we don't know for sure, those could have been real prophecies that they're putting in the book. Either way, you still have other issues. You still have the seven heavens. You still have, major theological issues like the Trinity in it. So even if those parts are not leaven, you still have other parts that are definitely leaven. And there's still issues with it. So I just think to me, as far as Yahuwah giving his son's name to the prophets, we don't see that in scripture. It's not Yahuwah's character to outright give Yahusha's name to the prophets before he came to earth. There, like I said, the closest you get is Zechariah 6:12, which is more of a metaphor. It's more of like, his name is the branch. So meaning the guy who he just called the branch is the name of the Messiah. So Yahuwah wasn't outright telling you Yahusha's name is Yahusha. He was saying his name is the branch metaphorically. So Yahuwah doesn't usually reveal his quiver. Yahushua is known as the hidden quiver of Yahuwah. He doesn't usually reveal to people before it's time. And you'll see there's other things, there's worse things than this in the book as we go forward here. There's going to be a lot worse things than just that, that we just mentioned just now with naming Yahusha before he came. All the patriarchs, chapter 9, verses 7 and 10. Go ahead, brother.
Also, too, you would think that if in multiple places in Scripture, Yahuwah said, "My son's name will be Yahusha," that you would also see a lot of places with a lot of people named Yahusha getting killed off.
Yeah.
Because of the enemy trying to cover, which you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a little far-fetched, some of this stuff. It's a little far-fetched, a lot of the things they're trying to add in there. They're trying to make it, I think they were really meaning well. They were trying to get these Kabbalistic rabbis to accept, Yahusha or whatever. And it just, they were misled to do that. But yeah, so we have in the next bullet point here, we have chapter 9, verses 7 to 10. All the patriarchs are already in heaven with resurrected bodies. To me, this is another big issue. Nowhere in Scripture do you have all the patriarchs are already at this moment in heaven. And this would, by the way, this would be in the days of Isaiah. So you would be saying essentially that Adam has been in heaven this whole time. There's no Scripture for that. So chapter 9, verse 7 starts here. And there I saw the set apart Abel and all the righteous. So this vision is claiming that Isaiah's in heaven, in the spirit, seeing Abel and all the righteous physically in heaven. To me, that's a red flag. There I saw Enoch and all that was with him there. Now, I just want to make it clear. I know some people are going to say, well, Enoch was taken. Okay, I get it. Genesis 5 says Enoch was taken because he was blameless. Okay, I get it. Does it say in Scripture that Enoch stayed in heaven and that he never, ever, 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 ever died? Doesn't say that. It says that the context in Genesis 5:24, I'll just put in simple layman's terms. At that moment is the context. It's saying he did not die, he was taken. It does not ever say in the Bible Enoch never died or never experienced a human death. That is assumption or presumption. That is not. So again, I believe this is a contradiction to say that Enoch is still up there in heaven. By the time you get to Isaiah, that means Enoch never came back down and he never died a regular death. That's what this author is claiming. Okay, Enoch and all who were with him, stripped of the garments of flesh. So this is even saying that Enoch already is up there in heaven with a heavenly body. This would actually go back to not directly, but this would kind of parallel with the second Enoch and third Enoch about Enoch becoming Metatron. Because the idea of Enoch becoming Metatron is he became a heavenly scribe angel when he was taken up to heaven in the Kabbalistic second and third Enoch books. Not first Enoch. First Enoch doesn't claim that. But go ahead, brother.
So I have a question that I can't seem to answer. Obviously, we know that people ascended, right? Hanuk ascended, Eliyahu ascended. So what does it mean when it says who has ascended but he who first descended, right?
Yeah, I would think that. Go
ahead.
My answer would be that the context of no one has ascended to heaven or descended but the Son of Man is that ascension would be that he of himself is ascending into heaven. Enoch, according to even tradition, Enoch was taken by the word of Yahuwah. So Yahusha himself is bringing him up into the heavenly realm. He's not ascending of himself. like physically ascending himself, going up.
Mm-mm.
Like with Yahusha, when he became a man, he of himself, with no angels, anything, came down into that fetus. He physically of himself descended, and he physically of himself, as far as I to my recollection in the book of Acts, the angels didn't help him get into heaven. He went physically of himself back up into heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the difference between him and Enoch and all the prophets. They usually were taken up by something, whether a chariot or messengers or the Father himself. Like even the Targums talk about by the word of Yahuwah, Enoch was caught up into heaven or ascended up. And I think ascended is a bad term for this book to call it the ascension of Isaiah, because that's not even what's really happening to him. He's being taken by a messenger into heaven. So that's not really ascension. That's more I know why they call it ascension is because you're going up, but it's really the messenger is taking him into the heavenly realm, whether physically or in the spirit. So I would say there's a slight distinction, if that makes sense, between the Father sending a messenger to take you to the heavenly realm versus you are physically of yourself ascending up into heaven by yourself. It's not exactly the same thing. Like that's how I explain it to people, because we know that scripture doesn't contradict itself. We know, like you just said, people have been caught up into heaven. But I don't think being caught up into heaven or someone taking you into heaven is the same thing as you physically ascending by yourself up and down. That's not exactly the same thing. Like when Yahusha died, he physically descended by himself into Sheol. So that's it's not really like the same thing as if a messenger brought him down there. So I think part of the problem with the ascension terminology is that certain books like this are confusing terminology, and really that's not even what an ascension is. I would have to look up what this book was originally called, but I think the Ascension of Isaiah was a modern phrasing for this book, because let me just see here, because I remember looking at this before. Ascension of Isaiah original title. That's the only way I could explain it, is like you're going up to heaven by yourself on your own and ascending and descending versus a heavenly being guiding you into heaven. Let's see here. Okay, so it was originally called Ascension of Isaiah. Yeah, I would say that's a contradiction too, to call it Ascension, because that's not even what's happening in the book. So that title actually contradicts what's actually happening with Isaiah in that book. He's being taken by some messenger. I forget if it's Uriel. One of them is taking him up into these visions and taking him up into the heavenly realm to see these things. So I would say that's a big contradiction too, if they're calling that an ascension, because that's not what Yahusha did. Yahusha physically went down and up from heaven to earth by himself. So that's the difference. That I think that would be the major difference. If I'm not mistaken, Mom, wouldn't that be the difference?
Mhm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you're going up and down by yourself. No one's guiding you down.
Right.
It's like, I'm not even trying to compare it to superheroes, but it'd be like, if Superman or whoever went like flying up straight and flying down straight, it's like, it's almost that. Like it's literally you're of yourself going up and down heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
Versus what happened to Enoch, if the Targums are telling something truthful about that commentary of Genesis 5, and that's what really happened. He was taken by the word of Yahuwah. That's not an ascension. So I think there's a confusion of terminology with the word ascension and what ascension actually means. It's really, I think that's what it has to be talking about, because we see, John was showed heaven in the spirit, was taken up to heaven. That's not an ascension, obviously. There's I think there's just a misunderstanding of terminology would be my answer to that. But anyway, Um, so yeah, the ascension of Isaiah 9, 7 to 10 is claiming that all the righteous are already up in heaven. Isaiah is being shown this vision as if all the patriarchs are already up in heaven, which contradicts scripture. Scripture says that David to this day is in Sheol. And I know someone was going to say, well, the spirit, to be present with the master is to be out of the body. That's not what that's talking about. Okay, to be present with the master, that was not talking about heaven. Paul was talking about Sheol and Abraham's bosom, to be present with the master. When you actually look at the context, he's either talking about that, or he's talking about being in a resurrected body. To be present with the master and be out of the body that he was in at that moment. When he was talking, he's talking about to be out of this humanly body is to be present with the master, because we can't be in heaven if we're human. Right. We can't be mortal flesh and be in heaven. That's the whole point of what Paul was saying there. And again, the whole and neither is this saying here it's talking about spirits in heaven, okay? Because I know some people will quote Ecclesiastes and they will say, oh, well, Ecclesiastes says that our spirits are taken, okay? Yes, he takes the breath of life he originally gave you.
Right.
But your breath of life of itself is not you.
Right.
You still have your nefesh that is no longer a nefesh because the spirit was taken from the body. To make a nefesh, to make a soul, you need a spirit and a body. So your breath of life is just the breath of life. He's taking the breath of life back. That doesn't mean you're in heaven. So there's a whole misunderstanding in the church about that. But anyway, so this shows to me that this is a book that is promoting Catholic or mainstream evangelical ideas of life after death, which is another issue to me. So Ascension 9 verse 5, you can't hear Yahusha's name until he is out of his earthly body. This is another weird thing about the vision. Supposedly in the same vision, Isaiah could not hear Yahusha's name until it showed him ascending back up into heaven after the resurrection. There's just a lot of weird stuff, a lot of Gnostic type of stuff in or mystical, you could say, stuff in this book. It's very strange. Ascension 9 verse 16, Yahusha will remain 545 days. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the context would be that he's remaining on earth until he ascends back to earth. Ascends back to heaven. So it says here, and when he has plundered the messenger of death, that would be the devil, in Jewish tradition, that's Satan, he will ascend on the third day. Now, again, he doesn't ascend on the third day. That's wrong.
Right.
He doesn't go back up to heaven. What does scripture say? Don't touch me. I haven't ascended to my Father yet.
Right.
Okay, wrong. So verse 16 also has a contradiction about the third day. It would say that he's ascending up to heaven right on the third day. That doesn't happen.
No.
He will remain in that world 540. Oh, okay. So I misunderstood what it's saying here. So this is an even bigger issue than I thought. Okay, so this would be saying Yahusha's remaining 545 days in heaven before he comes back. Now, the bigger problem with that is it's been way longer than 545 days. And I know a lot of people will say, isn't a day as 1,000 years? Yes, a day is as 1,000 years. Not literally 1,000 years. If Yahuwah was trying to teach us that a day is literally time-wise 1,000 years, you would have a verse saying, like, a day is literally 1,000 years. Then you could claim that. But as is not the same thing as is, okay? Is definite. As is comparative. It is allegory, okay? So even if you want to say this, well, Doug, this means that he's going to stay for 5,000 more years in heaven and come back. Technically, if that's the case, That wouldn't that be a broken prophecy anyway?
Mm-hmm.
What, Mom? What would 5,000 years from his ascension be?
5,000 years?
Just in case. Well, actually, you don't. No, that never mind. That wouldn't even work because
No.
if one day is of 1,000 years, it wouldn't be 545 days. It would have been 5,000. If you really want to say that. Sorry guys, I'm confusing y'all. So even if someone wants to try to rationalize this, first of all, it says 500 days. It doesn't say 5,000. So the only way you could get like even reconcile that, it would have had to say in this verse, he's going to remain in that world 5,000 days. That's the only way you could get that. And even that, it might be a little bit off because his return still hasn't happened. So there's a lot of issues to me in Ascension of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 16. There's two main issues. The timing of how long he's remaining in heaven until his second coming, and when he ascended. He did not ascend on the third day. He rose from the dead on the third day. He did not ascend to heaven on the third day. So, Mom, does it say in Acts, doesn't it say how long he stayed with them?
I'm looking for that myself. Exactly.
I think it's in Acts. Try the book
okay.
of Acts. Might be Acts 1 or 2.
Okay.
Try the book of Acts because I think it mentions how long.
Let's see.
Okay. I think
Well-
it was 40 days.
Well, what was it, brother?
I said I think it was 40 days, but I'll go double check.
Yeah, I know it was only a few days. It was not that long of a
I
time.
thought it was 45 days.
Okay, let me see here. How
I'm not
long?
sure.
Either way, I mean, either way, the point we're all trying to make is it wasn't on the third day he ascended to heaven. That's the bigger point.
That's right.
So I don't know who did this book, but I'll tell you right now, they're very unknowledgeable of prophecy, very unknowledgeable.
40 days. It's right here in the first
As
chapter.
as far as messianic prophecy, I would say they're just bad with. They're really bad with the timing of his second coming. I don't really get that. Oh, go ahead, bro. I think you were trying to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with your mom. 40 days.
Yeah, in the first chapter of Acts, it does say 40 days. He appeared over a period of 40 days.
So according to this book, he ascends to heaven like 46 days before he does in the New Testament. Then it claims that he's going to be up there for a specific 545 days before he returns, which both have not happened. So, yeah, I hope the viewers and listeners are seeing how ridiculous this book is here. Okay, there's no way this can be scripture.
No,
there's no way.
Mm-mm.
Ascension of Isaiah 9 verse 36, same chapter, verse 36. Another instance of angel worship here. So it says. And the second heaven whom I saw was on the left of my master, and I asked, who is this? He said to me, worship him, for he is the angel of the set-apart spirit, who speaks in you and the rest of the righteous. So now it's, because it's made Yahuwah's Ruach an actual Malach, it's telling you to worship Malachim. That is a huge issue. That is very, very, very blasphemous, and it's promoting idolatry. It's telling you to worship something that's not the Father, because it's created a trinity in this book. So that's a big deal there. That breaks Exodus chapter 20. Okay. And obviously we know in reality Yahuwah is the Spirit. So I'm obviously being facetious right now, but when you create a false paradigm trinity like that in this book, and then even worse than that, you make the third person in that trinity an angel. You're promoting angel worship, essentially.
That's right.
So that's a big deal. Chapter 10, verse 7, Yahusha's name revealed to Isaiah. Again, we talked about this. Okay, this very unlikely that Isaiah would be the only person to hear the name Yahusha out of all the prophets, and then somehow he would have to relate that to the rest of the prophets in this book. That it just doesn't make any sense. Ascension of Isaiah 11, verse 24, none of the messengers noticed Yahusha leaving heaven to become flesh. So this would claim that Yahusha somehow blinded the messengers, all the messengers in heaven, as he's going through the seven heavens descending. Or, my bad, no, this context is him ascending up, that when his first coming happened, none of them recognized him when he took on flesh. That's
unbiblical.
Yeah.
They attended him when he was in the wilderness.
Well, also the devil even said it. He said, "Oh, if you're the son of Yahuwah, do this."
Mm-hmm.
So the devil recognized him. So,
yeah, no, that's unbiblical completely.
So, guys, please, we got to be better studiers of the word here. We got to rightly divide the word. And honestly, these were just a handful of issues. I was just trying to give you guys the biggest contradictions here. Like, these are bad. These are like, this there's no way this can be scripture. There's no way. And I mean, there probably could have been more if it was more than 11 chapters, this book, honestly. So, I recommend, guys, any of you out there that are preaching that this book is scripture, please look up the verses that we listed here. Please reread it, the whole book, not a couple of chapters, before you're deciding that it's scripture. To me, there's a lot of issues with it. There's so many more we could go through. I think the biggest deal is the life after death thing was the most obvious thing, that it's mainstream Christian belief system. So I think, there's no way this book can be scripture.
No.
The first 4 chapters kind of trick you, and they make you think maybe this could be scripture. Like the first 4 or 5 chapters, like both me and Brother Yahusha will admit it. Like, it seemed pretty much on par. There's a little bit of midrash of the whole King of Manasseh thing that could be true, could not be true. But once you get into like chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's very obvious. So my thing is, whoever wrote the prior part of the book, the first 2 sections or whatever, or the first section, probably was a Hebrew or someone that was knowledgeable of the Tanakh and of oral tradition. Once you get to about 6, 7, 8, 9, that's a Christian person now putting their copy of whatever they were writing, and it's being combined. So once you get to the Christian part of the book, it gets really weird, because you have all the righteous up there in heaven already. You have, this, you have that. The Trinity, which is very alarming, because the Trinity should have been a first century belief. But I guess there were certain Christians that already had a Trinity. I don't know. It's very strange. So, but anyway, so hopefully, guys, this was edifying. Hopefully this will show you guys that we got to be a little bit more careful in this book. Yes, there's some benefits of this book culturally, certain terminology they use, and, but overall, it cannot be scripture. Now, I just want to kind of show you guys the part here in chapter 4, which I said is plausible. Okay, it's plausible that this could have came from an earlier source, this part in chapter 4, okay, because it talks about the end times, it talks about, the third temple, this and that. I think it's very possible that someone could have had a prior source that was inspired, and they used a portion of that in this book. And so this is the only portion that I think could have been from a prior source, is chapter 4, where at the end it talks about, where it mentions Yahushua was mentioned in, that Yahuwah's son is mentioned in all the prophets and this and that. And it claims in verse 22 that supposedly this is mentioned in Isaiah 13, technically, it's saying. So could that be the case about like all this stuff about the end times and all that? Yeah, it's very possible. But there's so many portions of this book that's definitely not scripture. So this is what happens, is you get these fragments like Wikipedia says, and you get all these little fragments, and they're combining these fragments together as one book. This fragment of chapter 4 could have been part of scripture at one point. We don't know. Could have. But the rest of the book, a lot of the rest of the book is heretical. And there's no way I can consider it scripture. So I do find it interesting. Culturally, I find it interesting. There's many extra biblical books that are kind of interesting. But I think we should be careful to confuse interesting with inspired.
Right.
It's interesting to see what people believed in the first century, first 100 AD, 100 AD, 200 AD, what they believed before, before Christianity really became popular, and you see a lot of different mixed beliefs. Some that are plausible, others that are way off in left field. But that's all you can consider them interesting. They're interesting cultural references. That's all they are. It's the same way I look at the Mishnah. I don't look at the Mishnah as scripture or as, definitive history. I look at it as interesting opinions of the scribes and the rabbis. They're interesting. It's not, so I think it's important to take, with a grain of salt, a lot of these books, what they say. I personally think that, we just need to be, as the body of Messiah, we need to be a little bit more careful with calling this scripture. And the main reason we're doing this right now is there was a member of the body, already calling this scripture, promoting it on YouTube in a post. So this is the reason I wanted to kind of do this study, just to warn people that, if you're preaching this as scripture, you don't know what the whole book says, that you're leading people astray, and you need to be careful. You need to be careful of that. So my suggestion is, even if you really like a book, but you've not read the whole thing, don't be promoting it on your ministry. Okay. We have a responsibility to teach truth, to promote truth, and Yahuwah's word can't have leaven in it. So, and this is the biggest problem that I see out there is we're ready to jump the gun, so I just hope you guys take this as constructive criticism, not trying to attack you guys. Just trying to make you think a little bit about before posting something on YouTube without fully knowing what you're reading. Go ahead, brother.
Even in kind of going through, even in growing up and kind of going through school, I was taught to read a book 3 times all the way through. You read it through the first time all the way through, it just kind of gives you a outline where you can remember an outline. You read it through the second time, and you pretty much it does, and then you read it the third time, and you're kind of break it down. But I've never heard of just kind of reading through a book once and then really being able to kind of break it down.
Yeah, I think these books are, and I could be wrong, but I don't think these books are even being read fully through before they're being promoted. In a general sense, I think it's more or less that people know certain chapters that seem scriptural, and then they're just blindly, well, not just focusing, but blindly trusting the whole book based on certain chapters. So for Jubilees, for example, right? You see a lot of people promoting Jubilees as scripture. Why? Because there's isolated verses that talk about in the end times, Yahuwah's people will seek the law. Okay, but what does the rest of the book say? Don't focus on one little verse and try to promote it as something without knowing the whole book. So this is the thing. You got to at least read through the book once over and write down stuff as you're reading it, notes down as you're reading it, what the book is preaching. Then you have to go back and listen, guys, this takes work. This takes work. It's not easy. This takes work. We're not just to read the word, but study the word. Study to show yourself approved means literally studying, not just reading. Okay, it means taking down notes. Okay, like, and trust me, like, it was not that easy when we had to do these exposés on Jasher Jubilees. It took time out of our lives. It's not that easy. You got to go through verse by verse in these books and chapter after chapter to see where the leaven is, okay? Because the devil's not going to be obvious with you most of the time. He's not going to make it so obvious where you don't have to study into it to see where the leaven is. And so this is my recommendation. Like, at least read a book all the way through every chapter, every single verse, every single chapter before you're even thinking of considering it scripture. You need to make sure you know all that what's in there, because I've seen it where a lot of these books, like we've said before, if you look it up for yourselves, you research it for yourself, a lot of these books are multiple authors. So the parts of the books that seem scripture probably have one author, and then the other parts that are way off have another author. So that's all it is with a lot of these books. They're like fragments being put together. And that's the danger in that. Like, people don't understand it's not just one author. And you know, there's easy books like Jubilees and Jasher, I think, are just easy. They're very simply, uninspired, because they're, I think a lot of the problems too is people don't even know what the traditions of men are. When they go into these books, they're not informed. My suggestion before even testing books like Jubilees and Jasher, do your homework, research the traditions of men, the traditions of the elders that Yahusha referenced to the Pharisees, how he hated them. Okay, find out what he was talking about, what Paul was talking about with the fables of the Yahudim. Then read those books and test them, because you're going to find in both of those books, I would say about 80-90% of those books are the tradition of the elders. Okay, and if you don't know about what the tradition of the elders are, you'll accept those books as scripture because you don't know. So this is the thing, is like, you got to study. I understand Yahusha chose the dumb of this world. I get it. But that doesn't mean we stay dumb and we don't research things. There's nothing wrong with being a scholar, guys. There's nothing wrong with being scholarly in your walk and not being ignorant to certain things. Because ignorance does destroy us. Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Okay, so there is a concept of you're not to remain simple when you come into the faith. Because I know a lot of people will say, well, Yahuwah chose the dumb. I get it. I get that. Obviously, he did. But that doesn't mean that Matthew and them stayed, dumb to the word. Doesn't mean they stayed like that. They learned things. They learned from Yahuwah himself through his ministry, through Yahusha's ministry. So we really should be researching things before going into these books, especially when you're talking about on the Jewish side. Like, Jashes and Jubilees are rabbinical Jewish books. So unless you know about the traditions of men, you are not going to know what is leaven or not in those books, because there's a lot of legends in them. There's a lot of Mishnah stuff in them. Unless you know that, you're going to think it's scripture. Because I've talked to people that have already accepted them. They don't want to hear it. They want to say, oh, well, Doug, well, it's real history. I'm like, how do you know that? What's the source? What's the source of that? How do you know that's real history? You're just blindly believing it? Where in their history are they writing down stuff like the Pharaoh of the Exodus converted after the Exodus and he didn't die? Nowhere in scripture does it say that. Nowhere in any real history book. I'm not talking about the Mishnah. I'm not talking about the Talmud. I'm talking about real history books. Nowhere is that mentioned. So you got to start thinking, where are they getting this stuff from? Where are they getting these fanciful tales from and all that? They're getting it from some type of source. So that's why, for me, Yahuwah praise Yahusha on that. I knew about the tradition of the elders even before testing these books. I knew about it. I knew about some of that stuff and what the Talmud said through various other people talking about what the Talmud would say. So I knew that a lot of this stuff was far-fetched before even reading about it. But there's a lot of people that are deceived because they just don't know. They're ignorant. They don't know. They don't understand a lot of this stuff is made up. That's why Paul calls it fables, Judean fables. Stay away from those that stay away from Judean fables, you know? And he's very clear that he's talking about those of his own. Like, just to go, I was reading this the other day, just to go into some context with what I'm talking about here. He's talking about his own. He's not talking about Gentiles. Okay, I'll show you right here. He says, of the circumcision, which, by the way, if you guys haven't researched, of the circumcision, there was a circumcision party. So when he says of the circumcision, you can pretty much say that's modern day Judaism. Okay, so let's see here. Titus 3, starting at verse. Okay, let's start at verse 9 here. But avoid foolish questions and genealogies and contentions and strivings about the scribes. Oh, really? He Pigeon used the Aramaic there. Interesting. So the Sefer uses the Peshitta in this verse, striving about the scribes, for they are unprofitable and vain. So mind you, Paul's already talking about the scribes here, okay? So he's already talking about his own people. A man that is a heretic after the first and second admonition reject, knowing that he that is such is subverted and being condemned of himself. So then it talks about when I shall send, okay. Where does it talk about the, I think it's later on in the chapter, it talks about the fables of the Yahudim. All right, let me look for that real quick. Jewish fables.
Could I say something?
Yeah, go
I was
ahead.
going to say something before. I would just like to say reminders of things that we all know, but just sometimes we need a reminder. If you're a shepherd or a leader or a teacher, you need to also remember before putting forth any of these books as scripture that you're going to be held accountable. Okay. We are told that in many places that those that are, teachers and shepherds, and they are going to be held to a higher standard. So you want to make sure that you're not going to hear that on Judgment Day. Why didn't you take better care before teaching this to my little ones? The Father is very serious about that when he says, if one of these little ones is led astray, he's not going to take kindly to it. So I would just, I know Douglas has said basically the same thing, but I would just say, just remember that aspect, that we are going to be held accountable for. And those of us that aren't teachers and whatnot, it says for every thoughtless word we have ever said. That's a scary thing. And just one other thing. Remember that Satan, one of his biggest tools is that he takes some truth. Why do you think he puts the chapters that are pretty much on point at the beginning? Because he thinks people are going to give up after a couple of chapters, and then he thinks that he'll have them and he will have deceived them. So we have to remember constantly that battle that we're dealing with him. He knows his time is limited, and he's going to be trying. I know, I notice in what I'm looking around at this world, he is moving at a rapid pace right now. 10 years ago, you didn't see some of the things at the level that you're seeing them now. And he is moving at a rapid pace. And we have to be aware of the spiritual war that we are in. So that's all that I want to say.
Okay. All right. So I was thinking about the wrong chapter here. So it's Titus 1:14. It says, "Will pay no attention to Judean fables or to mere human commands of those who reject the truth." So it's saying that these fables of the Judeans literally go against the truth. Okay? Meaning that if you hold to these Jewish myths, you cannot be upholding to the word. It's impossible. That's what it's saying in Titus 1:14. I could have swore there's another place of talking about Jewish fables. I could have swore maybe it's in
I think
Timothy.
so too. Yeah.
I think it's in First or Second Timothy
yeah,
is what
I think you're right.
is what I'm thinking of.
It does say in different places.
Let me just see here. I'm gonna try to look this up. Stupid thing. Okay. You okay, Mom?
Yeah, oh, I'm all right. I'm just taking a breath. A deep breath.
See here. My sword should be. Come on, stupid thing. First, let's try 2 Timothy first. Fables. 2 Timothy 4:4. So now, mind you, this is not. It doesn't expressly say fables of the Judeans, but it's talking more in sense in general perspective about fables in general. So it says here, let's start verse 3. For the time will come when they will not suffer wholesome doctrine. Wholesome. This is what we're talking about right now. Wholesome doctrine. But having their ears itching, shall after their own lusts get them a heap of teachers, meaning many teachers, and shall turn their ears from the truth, and shall be given unto fables, that watch you in all things suffer adversity and do the works of a preacher, because your ministry to be throughly favored or liked of. So the whole purpose he's talking about here is the connection here with the fables is they'll want to heap up teachers for themselves. If you ever notice, people that get sucked up and with these type of books, they heap up favorite teachers for themselves. Okay, they heap up teachers that they want to listen to rather than really hearing the truth about these books. They would rather listen to the teacher that is giving them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why it's not popular to go against the pseudepigrapha and the majority of the apocrypha. It's not popular because all these false teachers want you to think that every book outside of the canon is scripture, because somehow Yahuwah would have given the devil such control to take away all of his words somehow. Okay? And this line of thinking goes that, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls, that there's so much scripture found in the Qumran caves, even though there's no proof that any of those books are scripture. They claim that this been hidden from us from the Catholic Church. First of all, the Catholic Church had nothing to do with the Dead Sea Scrolls whatsoever. A lot of those scrolls were hidden in 100 BC. There was no Catholic Church. Okay, a lot of those scrolls, even the older scrolls, 300 BC, the Catholicism did not exist until like 300 and something AD. So the logic there is off. That these are books that are scripture. That just because the Catholic Church hid them from us, they didn't hide them from us. They've been in caves that whole time. These guys, whoever wrote those books, like Jubilees and all them, were hiding them for their own reasons. Probably because they were getting persecuted. Probably because they were kind of, their belief systems were a little off. Whoever wrote some of these books had weird calendars, had weird, belief systems. So they felt like they had to hide this stuff just in case they got persecuted. So that's what I believe happened. The same thing with the Book of the Nazarene. I could go all day with that book too. How that book is so false. And it wasn't even called the Book of the Nazarene. It was written by Christians. Okay, it was written by Celtic Christians. And that book was called the Gospel of Calais or whatever. It was written by Celtic Christians. Supposedly, they were heretical, goes the story, because supposedly at one point, the only copy that was existent at that time was being burned. So again, like, there's a weird mystical story about that book, supposedly, that somehow it resurfaced after most of the manuscripts got burned. So one thing I've always noticed too with these false books and just falsified manuscripts, there's always a mystical tale. There's always a weird, like, almost like an esoteric tale or a mystical tale, or how somehow it managed to survive supernaturally and this and that. And you see that with the Codex Sinaiticus and the Westcott Hort text of the New Testament. Somehow these guys that were burning manuscripts for lumber, how somehow one or two of them, a monk, saved them. And now that's even coming out that manuscript is falsified anyway. It's not a real manuscript anyway. So all I'm trying to say, guys, is be researchers. Don't be afraid to be scholarly. It's not a sin to be scholarly and being a researcher. It's not a sin to do that. Okay? Study to show yourself approved. Take your time. Like Brother Yahusha said, read a book of not even one time all the way through, maybe 2 or 3 times through. And I would say when you're doing it, take down notes. Write down what the book is promoting. See if that matches with the Bible. That's how you test it. And again, I've seen this being preached by false ministries out there that, there is 2 or 3 witnesses to this. But then they'll give you only apocryphal sources as the witnesses.
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
No.
That doesn't count. Like when someone says to me, this is legit because 4th Ezra says it, the Ascension of Isaiah says it. They're proving my point.
Yeah.
If you got heretical sources that are your witnesses to it,
yeah,
it can't be true. So, when someone brings that up to you, ask them, put them on the spot. Be like, show me in the Bible. I want to see the Bible. Show me the Bible where it's there. And if not, then it's an addition at best. It's someone adding to scripture. It's someone adding. And again, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here. I understand that there can be certain details that are left out in the Bible. I get that. But we're talking about doctrine here. We're talking about like what clearly happened in the Brit Hadashah versus what a book is claiming happened. Okay? So we gotta be a lot wiser, Body of Messiah. We gotta be a lot wiser because the devil is having his way with us right now.
Yeah.
For all these little extra biblical books. Okay? He's getting us distracted. He's getting us distracted from what's happening right now in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So anyway, guys, hopefully that was edifying. Hopefully it really got you guys, it got stirred up in your heart and your soul to want to start reanalyzing these things. And anyway, Yahuwah willing, see you guys next time. Shabbat Shalom. And Yahuwah willing, we'll see you next week. Have a great new month, everyone. All right. Okay.